Welcome back to another episode of New Patients Now. I'm your host, as always, Flint Geyer. Welcome to the audio experience or the video experience or whatever way you take this in experience, you do you, right? But been a couple weeks since we were together, and so excited to dive into something. I've been traveling a lot the last few weeks and at various events, both with clients, some new clients, but also got to go out and be around a lot of the people in the DSO space, right? So obviously we really focus on the private practice and helping them build, scale, and grow to really have the best possible exit, right? So whether you want to keep it for a lifetime of revenue or you want to sell it for max value, really we can help all along the way as long as you have a practice, But some things that I took away from that, and I think maybe, we'll call this where private practice, like what is the future for that? And in going to this event, surrounded by really not many doctors, it was a dental industry event, but it was mostly bankers and lawyers, and which was definitely different for somebody who's spent most of their time in the private practice arena. There is one commonality between the top performing private practices and what you could probably say is the top performing DSO or large group practice, okay? And I think there's some lessons that the private practitioner can learn from what they're doing, but also I think some reassuring things. So number one was the single greatest indicator of quote unquote same store growth or practice growth. Okay. So for you have a practice, your one store, your one practice, that's same store. If you have 17 offices, it is how are we growing those actual 17 without having to go and buy more locations, right? So without actually having to do mergers and acquisitions. But the single greatest indicator of same store or practice level growth, which is really where we operate, is how to grow the actual practice, not just go buy more, was new patient volume. Okay, so what I want you to hear loud and clear, this is not because it is the New Patients Now podcast. This is just because the data has proven it, although it's something that we've been saying for years, that your consistent and solid and intentional focus around what gets new patients to walk through the front door of your practice and what gets them to come back and refer other patients so that they can create more new patients for your practice, that still has to be paramount and an intentional part if you want to grow your practice. Now, if you don't want to grow your practice, if you want it to slowly crumble away, if you want your practice to ultimately be less valuable at the time of exit, then you don't have to focus on new patients. So good news for you. If you're not interested in it, you just don't get any of those things. Now, I say that, number one, as kind of like a very important reminder, but I also say it because it is quite simple. Just focus on making your practice as attractive as possible to a new patient, okay, a new customer. And what I kind of want to get back to the basics on today is what that really takes, okay? And there are three things that we want to talk about when we talk about how to make your practice accepting of additional new patient flow, all right? And I'm going to go through these three relatively briefly, and of course we can spend a long time on each of these. But, I may or may not be in the process of writing a book where we're going to actually go really in depth into this and much, much more. But I'll let you guys know more about that as it unfolds. But kind of in the middle of that process right now. Pretty excited. But okay, number one, be available. Okay. The number one thing you can do to increase your new patient flow, which puts you into the top category of practices that are more likely to actually see growth as opposed to see decline or plateau, right? And plateauing in a place where there is inflation is actually decline. So just as a reminder. So be available, right? In sports, the best ability is availability, because if you are hurt and you can't play, you can't help the team, you create no value. Okay. Another thing that I got from that conference, that I thought was great, one of the few things that I really saw correlate from really our philosophy around this and what I was hearing was the most successful group practices are focusing on the same thing that the most successful 1, 2, or 3 location practice that has a single owner focuses on. And that is this: value creation. Those who focus on value creation in the eyes of who is most important, okay, and that's the key, those are the ones who do what it takes to be available. So what does that look like for you? That might mean being open on Friday. That might mean being available for patients to call you between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. or 12 p.m. and 1 p.m. or 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Because guess what? Those are all actions, decisions that you have to make as the leader of the practice to be available for your patient. But you know what it also is? Something that you may look at as not necessary because it's extending the team or not having a lunch break or, well, I thought I got in this business to only be going into the office 3 or 4 days a week. Like, that's a choice. But it would not be the choice, as proven by the data, to set you up for success to actually grow your practice long term. So be available. And it's important we understand available on whose terms. Is it available on your terms? Is it available on the team member's terms? No, it is available on the terms of the patient, because that is the person you have to create value for. If you create value for them, they will return value to you. Okay. It's a great book called The Science of Getting Rich, goes into this in great depth, but the summarization of the entire book is this: if you create more in use value than you ask in cash value, you will always win. So be available. Step 1. Okay. Step 2, you have to have a simple and effective conversion process. And when I say conversion process, I mean if a new patient reaches out to your office through the phone, text, email, website, social media, like whatever it is that you allow them to access you through, and you choose to make yourself available, right? Because you're being patient-centric in that way, which is good. You've done the first step. You're available. Well, then we have to make sure that we actually have a, number 1, simple, number 2, effective conversion process. So this opens us up to the question of how many ways can a patient reach out to your practice? How many ways can they potentially interact with you for that very first time? For most of you, that's still overwhelmingly via the telephone. However, you have to be mindful of every new communication platform you allow a patient to communicate with you through. We have to then mirror that same process, that same conversion system. Okay. So if you're running ads, if you are not running ads, if you have a bunch of referrals, if you have 6 different ways a patient can contact you, you have to ask yourself this: am I available at the same level across all platforms, all communication methods? And 2, do I actually have a written, understood, trained, and monitored conversion process that I take those new patient, let's call them leads, through? Okay. So, and what that looks like is this: is if I were to reach out to your practice via a phone call, via filling out a form online, via reaching out to you, on Instagram, right? Whatever it is. Do I get taken through the same process that is designed to get me to walk through the front door? Or are those all 3 different processes with 3 different desired outcomes and 3 different perceived experiences on the side of the patient? Okay. Now this is tricky, right? And now the challenge is you may be offering more ways for a patient to reach out to you than you actually have the bandwidth to monitor, in which case you may need to eliminate a source. But focusing on the ones that have the highest volume are always going to be the most important. So again, phone still most likely the highest volume. So if you want a assessment of how that's being done today, totally free, like you don't have to do anything with us. But if you take our 5-star challenge, that's what that is designed for. That 5-star challenge is designed to assess your availability based on the hours that you market. So like we will only perform that assessment during the hours at which you say online you are open for business. And it will also assess that conversion process for you. So if you want a simple rating on a 1 to 5 scale, that's what the 5-star challenge is designed to do, is really to let you know, are you available in the eyes of the patient? And do you have a conversion process that's going to set you up for success? Okay. Now, the back end of that process, which is post-conversation, right, is a whole other beast. This is, if I do call and we do have a conversation, but I don't schedule, what's the follow-up system, right? So that second step, the simple conversion process, is not just that initial interaction. It's actually the initial interaction. It is the follow-up procedure, whether or not, if I don't schedule, and then it's the follow-through procedure that is going to be the thing that makes me want to actually show up. So some of you, or maybe you, as you watch this or listen to this today, you're thinking about schedule rate. You're thinking, well, what percentage of the people who call are scheduling? Well, that's great. But what you may be missing is all the ones who schedule but don't show, right? So we need to be in the new patients that show up for the appointment business, not in the new patients who said they were going to show up business, because that is actually a very different thing. Okay. So number 1, be available in the eyes of the patient. Number 2, have a simple and effective conversion process that takes them all the way from the initial point of contact all the way through to actually walking through the front door of your practice for that very first time. Those are step 1 and step 2. Now, those you can get away with and do relatively well if you only have those 2. But this third piece, this third key, actually can oftentimes be what really maximizes the result. And sometimes we actually focus on this third one and we don't do the other 2. That doesn't work. You can do the first 2, but if you don't do the third one, it's not going to get the same intended result. Okay. But the third step is this. It is an enthusiastic and engaged team member. Okay. So whether or not you think that AI is going to take over this whole process or not, at the end of the day, humans want to interact with human beings. If the human being they're interacting with has an engaging and positive energy, okay? Now, do people want to eliminate, remove, reduce their interaction with human beings that are negative, that are not fun to be around, that are just like kind of a pain in the ass, for lack of a better descriptor? 100%. So if you think about the places where AI receptionists like all day long are going into play, it's like hospital systems. It's like places where you already had a bad time. Okay. This is not taking over. Like, it was great. I was on the phone the other day. I was calling it was like the home service. I probably shouldn't say who they are, but I just moved and we moved in this house, and it's like the security and AV company, right? And they clearly had the bright idea to have a AI receptionist handle all of their calls. Okay. It was horrible. Okay. They probably think it's great. They're like, but I mean, good Lord, it was worse than talking to 6 customer service agents, because they probably never asked a customer. They probably never actually thought, well, let's actually see what this is like. And by the third time I called, I'm just yelling at the thing like, send me to a human now. Oh, excuse me, I have a couple more questions so we can best serve you. It's like, no, person, now. And here's the thing. That happens all the time. Now, they thought it was simplicity. They thought it was going to make things more efficient. What I'll be honest they've done is actually pissed off more customers than have probably been excited about that process. So what you don't want to do is think that just because someone doesn't want to talk to a bummer of a human being on your team does not mean they don't want to talk to a person, right? because an engaged, empathetic, and enthusiastic team member who can apply a simple conversion process in the times in which patients hope that you guys are available, if you can put those three things together, that is where we see the very best results. Now, can we have some rollover after hours? Yes, totally. But the core of what it takes to have a growing new patient number, a steady flow of what truly is the lifeblood of your practice, are those simple three things. Be available on the terms of the patient, have a intentional and enforced simple conversion process, and then make sure that whoever is actually doing it is an enthusiastic, engaged, and empathetic team member. So I need a good attitude, I need good energy, and then I need you to follow the process the way that it's lined out. Because if we can do that, then you can start getting creative with the marketing. Then you can start getting creative with other things. But that has to be the foundation. That has to be the thing that sets your practice apart from the practice down the street. And today, in 2026, it is still true. The offices that have those three things have a higher chance of high new patient flow without any additional marketing. We continue to see this over and over again. And so what you need to do today is you need to go back and you need to assess how available are we on the terms of the patient. Okay, if you need to survey them, whatever, figure that out. Okay, do we have a simple conversion-focused process that anybody on the team could tell you how it works, right? And this is the bar. That process is this. If you walk in tomorrow and you're in your huddle, you would ask the team, hey, today, for fun, can somebody get up on the board and show me how we take a new patient from first call to actually walking through the front door? I bet you there's maybe one person who could do it. And you probably have a lot of other team members looking around wondering, I hope she doesn't pick me. Because that's where you start. And here's the thing, if that's the reaction, I got great news for you. There is a tremendous opportunity on the table that is not that challenging to solve and create different results, okay? And then lastly is enthusiastic team member, okay? And the enthusiastic team member comes a lot from like the culture of the building, whether or not you are actually a new patient-focused organization. So if no one cares about new patients, that person handling the new patient conversation probably is not going to be super like pumped about their job because they probably just get shit on by everybody else. And they're like, wow, I can't believe you scheduled this person there and whatever. It's like, okay, well, maybe we could flip the script and make sure everyone understands that that person who's answering those new patient phone calls, handling the new patient follow-up to make sure they show up, if they don't do their job, nobody else in the practice has a job. How about that? Because I would assume that's not how you look at this. And if it is, then you have to ask yourself, am I living that out? Okay? Like, does everyone else know how important that is? Because everyone else knowing that, being on the same page is what gets that individual to be fired up about it, to be enthusiastic, to want to go above and beyond. And that is ultimately, and then you got to give them the tools to be successful, right? So if you don't have a good conversion process and you're like, just be excited about your job, you're like, well, I can't because I keep trying and I keep failing because I don't know what I don't know, right? That's where the challenges come in. So 3 simple things. They are simple, but that does not mean that they are easy, and it does not mean that they come naturally to everyone. So if you look at your process today and you're missing something in any of those 3, that's where you have to focus. Because the single greatest indicator of whether or not your practice will grow 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2050 is do you or do you not have a healthy flow of new patients in your practice? And the marker is 75 a month. So if you're under, and if you're under 35, your practice is dying. This is not my opinion. This is what the data says. Under 35 a month, practices average a negative, I think, 9 or 10% growth rate. 75 or more, practices, I think, are growing like 14% on average, 20% on average, something like that. But and everywhere in between, you might as well count yourself as below. But again, it's only if you want to grow. It's only if you want something bigger that's going to provide something better. And if you want those things, then these are the 3 things you want to focus on. Thanks. We'll see you next time.